So 2022 is officially over, and I think we got a lot of stuff done. I think it's been a very good year. So that's one positive thing about having a YouTube channel, is it does keep you continually moving forward, keeps you motivated, keeps you working on stuff. And I think we did get a lot of stuff done this year. We actually started the beginning of the year. One of the first videos of the year was tearing out this wall and opening up the back of the bank barn. We put that header in there, and then we ended up tearing out the slatted floor, and we tore out the concrete blocks. And that allowed us to have somewhere that the steers and other animals could get under for shade and out of the weather. Now, this wasn't a goal for this year, but it is a continuing project. I'm sure this is something we're going to continue to work on, but that's how we ended up starting out the year. We ended up setting 5 goals last year and then a bonus goal. I don't think I did really well at adhering to the goals. So to start off, I just want to cover our goals from last year. We did end up changing those so that we modified them a little bit. They're not exactly the same. And we'll see how we ended up doing on our goals. We always end up setting those a little bit high, so we never do achieve everything. And then I want to cover our goals for 23. It's going to be a pretty big year. We've got a couple big projects planned, stuff we haven't done before, and I think it's going to be a pretty big year. I think we're going to make some big strides in 23. So goal number 1 was to close in the workshop and get it to where it would hold heat, so I had a warm place to work in the wintertime. So at the beginning of the year, there was no interior walls in this pole barn. Everything was completely open, and so we ended up framing in the walls. We got this wall covered up back here. We ended up putting the ceiling in the workshop, and we had it mostly closed in. It still wouldn't hold heat at the beginning of the year. So in the fall, we came back, we got the garage door, got it installed, and we installed blown-in insulation in the ceiling. And finally, the workshop was closed in completely and insulated, and it actually held heat. So we had a nice warm place to work this winter. So goal number 1 was a success. So goal number 2 was to actually fix up the firewood shed back here. And I didn't start on this till like December, and all we got done was to cut down all the trees that were around the firewood shed growing into the side of the roof, and we've got them down and all cleared, and this is ready to be fixed, but we didn't get it repaired. So this one was a fail, but at least we're set up for success for next year to get it done. So goal number 4 was to install a fishing dock out here on the pond. Now this goal changed, we modified it. The pond was completely covered in duckweed, probably 80 to 90% covered, so you could not even fish. So why put in a fishing dock if you can't fish? We thought that the pond aeration system, we had already purchased it the year prior. We thought that it was probably better to put it in instead and try to include, the reason would be to improve the health of the pond. I did the exact opposite. I had trouble with it. I ended up leaving it running, and it stirred up all the debris and the toxins at the bottom of the pond, the low oxygen water, and that ended up killing off most of my fish. All I had was basically little bitty fish left, like baby fish, not minnows, like baby bluegill, baby bass, you know, baby crappie, that kind of thing. So it will repopulate. We're planning on restocking in the spring. But goal number 4, modified the goal, and we failed, more or less. So probably my biggest failure of the year. So goal number 5 for 22 was to try to fix up the Allis-Chalmers tractor. Now, I think in my mind, it was to fix up the back half of the tractor. So I did get most of the back half torn apart, but that's pretty much as far as I got. I got the easy part done, right? Now it's the hard part. There was always other things that were more important that needed to be done. So this kind of got sidetracked, and this has kind of been a cold weather project. So goal number 5, fixing up the Allis-Chalmers, was probably like 25% done. So definitely not a success. So for 2023, I've got a total of 5 main goals. And the first one is to complete this workshop area. So step number 1 is going to be to finish this wall back there. You can see that it is insulated, but it is not covered. Now, I screwed that wall up big time. So there was numerous posts in that wall, and I framed up in between each one of those posts. But they're not relative to each other. So my stud spacing is screwed up all the way down the wall. So I probably won't end up putting this barn siding on that wall because it's just not going to work out with the way the studs are spaced. Instead, I'm probably going to do some kind of tongue and groove or shiplap or something like that on that wall. So it'll look like an accent wall. It's going to be a different installation, totally different. But I want to get that wall finished. That's step one. Step two is this side over here. That outside that window is our dog kennel. So we can get to the inside of the dog kennel from in here, but we can't get to the outside. We actually have to walk all the way around the pole barn. So we're gonna cut out that foam insulation. That's gonna be fun. We're gonna cut that out, frame in a wall section right here, and put in an outside door so we can get in and out of the outside of the dog kennel. And then we can finally cover that wall up. We can finish the top of the wall. And then after that, the walls will be complete. Step number 3 will be getting all the tools put where they're supposed to be and get the workshop arranged, and then I think the workshop will be complete. So goal number 2 for this year is to finish fixing up the back half of this tractor. I would like to get it back running where I can use it this summer. So step number 1 will probably be to disassemble a little bit more of the tractor. I think I've decided I'm going to take the lift arm section off and take this apart along with the PTO shaft. We're probably going to take a look inside the transmissions, make sure there's nothing to do there, do an evaluation on it. And then step number 2 will be to start the rebuild process. We're going to rebuild all the assemblies, put in new seals, new bearings, get everything back together, and then we'll start painting all the assemblies. I would like to paint from the transmission here all the way back on the tractor. So hopefully the back half will be all painted when we're done, and we'll get it all put back together. And then hopefully the goal is so I can use it this summer and it won't be sitting here in the pole barn anymore. So when we moved out here to the country, our 3 main goals was for more privacy, was to be able to live a more outdoor lifestyle, and to be able to be even more self-sufficient. So to do those things, we had to, one was to get out of town, get away from people, right? And then the other was to have your own land so that we could fish, so that we could hunt, so that we could hike, so we could do anything that we wanted outdoors on our own land. And then the third part of that, we could grow more food. We already grow our own chickens, our own pork, our own beef. We have chickens for eggs, and we grow vegetables in the garden. We cut up firewood every year. We heat our house with wood most of the time in the winter, and then we try to do everything ourselves. You know, we're do-it-yourselfers, and that's where we're mostly self-sufficient at right now. Now, one thing we haven't delved into too much is energy. We are still reliant on grid power. I do have 800 watts of solar panel back here. This is to hook to our solar generator. In case of power outages, I can still keep our freezers frozen and the refrigerator going, and so we don't lose all of that food that we have grown ourselves. So that leads us up to goal number 3. I have an electrical background, so this is kind of in my wheelhouse. I've looked at this really hard at solar. So goal number 3 is to basically get some type of a permanent solar energy solution on the property. Maybe not a huge system, but I want to get to where we have a permanent installation that runs all of our critical stuff, all of our freezers and our fridges, and gives us lighting, gives us hot water, things like that. So I want to get to that point where we are just kind of stepping into the solar, where we can at least get enough to run our critical stuff. So if we do have a power outage, we don't have nothing to worry about. I've already ordered some solar panels, about 3.5 kilowatts worth of solar. It's not huge, but it should be enough to do the loads that are important. So this goal will go through several steps throughout the year. We're going to start off doing some experiments, some load testing. We're going to see how big of a power system we need to power those critical circuits in our house. We're going to try to see how big of a battery do we need to make it last for several days with cloudy skies. And we're going to make sure the solar panel array is actually going to be big enough to do what we want to do. And then once we kind of get through all of our little experiments, we'll probably start a permanent installation. The way I see that permanent being is there'll be something installed in the basement that will run a portion of my house all the time off of solar. And the solar panels I don't want to put on my roof because that roof is super high off the back. And I don't want to use my real estate because I've got plans for stuff to go in the yard right here. So the solar panels are probably going to go on the pole barn roof, and they will feed that solar power to the basement of my house. So in the end, goal number 3, at the end of the year, I would like to have a permanent installed solution where I am running maybe a quarter or a third of my house off of solar all the time. So goal number 4 is to continue toward fencing in more permanent pastures. And we're going to start working toward this 12-acre field at the front of our property. So step number 1 is to clean out this fence row right here that's on the other side of this fence. And if you remember, there is a junk pile back here, a big open pit where they've thrown trash and junk. We want to get that fence row cleaned up, get that junk pile cleaned up. If you remember, the fence jogs around it, so that's the temporary part of this fence. So we want to get that all cleaned up and then straighten this fence back out, get it permanent the way we want it. We're probably going to end up putting a gate in here somewhere to open to that 12 acres. And then step number 2 is we're going to continue to clean this fence row out all the way to the front of the property and continue this fence up to the front of our property. And that will complete one side of this 12-acre pasture. So the third part would be to work on the south side of that 12 acres, and that would be to clean out this fence row that goes down the side of my driveway. Now, when I say clean out the fence row, I mean remove the old fencing, the old woven wire fence, clean out the brush. We're actually going to leave trees for shade. We're not going to cut out all the trees, just the smaller ones. And then the fourth step, if we get to it, would be to put a fence from this post here down that side of the field. And then that would get 2 sides of our 12-acre field fenced in. And we would offset that fence so many feet out from the trees. That way you can still mow around the trees and everything. But that is goal number 4, is to continue toward fencing in pasture. And if we can get everything done, we'll end up having 2 sides of this 12-acre field pretty well fenced in. And then hopefully the year after that, we can finish that up. So goal number 5 for 2023 is gonna be working on the well house. This was kind of a bonus goal last year. We never got to it. So this is an old well house on the property. This all depends on the well testing good. So we would probably start out kind of gutting the inside of this, cleaning the well out as best we can, get the water tested. And as long as it tests good, we're probably gonna build a whole new well house over the top of it with a new well pump, a new expansion tank, and we have to run power out here from the bank barn and get this all powered up and working. And then we're gonna end up running water lines to the pasture behind the barn here, where the pigs are, where the new pasture is, and maybe even all the way out to our garden. But that is goal number 5. It's probably the biggest goal of the year because it's multifaceted, and it's all really depending on whether the well tests good. So on top of those 5 goals, I'm going to have 3 side projects. I don't really want to commit to how far we'll get done on them. So the first one is, me and Rebecca have had a lot of discussions, and we've discussed kind of switching our livestock over to ones that are more purposeful. And that would somewhat involve probably getting out of fainting goats and moving on to some kind of an animal that is marketable, that you can sell to people for meat or sell at the sale barn. And that could involve other things too. We might get breeds of chickens that are more productive, and get the breeds of chickens and turkeys that are more productive as for meat instead of the ones that are more for show. So side project number 2 is going to be the firewood shed. We're going to start at this end. We're going to work our way that direction. We're going to be fixing the posts. We're going to be fixing the roof. We're going to be putting wood along the sides. We're going to make slatted sides around the firewood shed, and then we're going to divide it up into 4 separate bays. Now once we get the first half done over here and these 2 bays are done, whatever firewood we have left over after winter, which is stacked at that end, we're going to restack all that firewood, move all the firewood into these 2 finished bays, get it stacked up. then everything will be out of our way and we can continue on that end. I'm not sure exactly how far we'll get on this, but this is something that we'll work on throughout the year. So side project number 3 is the back of the bank barn. There is a whole big list of things that we can do back here, but that's all kind of depending on if we have steers in here or other livestock. That does kind of make things difficult to try to modify. So one of the things I want to do is where the sliding door is on this end over here, I want to open that up so that I can actually come in from the side, drive in from the tractor all the way to the back and clean it out with the tractor. So that involves opening that end wall up. That involves modifying this fence right here. So we're gonna have to end up putting some gates along this fence. One where we can drive in to the back of the barn. And then also a gate here where I can drive into the back of the barnyard from this side instead of having to drive all the way through and around from the other side. So fence modifications, barn modifications, lots of stuff to do. We'll just have to wait and see how far we get there, because this is a really difficult place to work on. Just, you know, we have to have it free and clear livestock where they can't get out while we're doing it. Well, I think that wraps up all of our plans for 23. Like I said, I always set my goals fairly high, higher than we can probably achieve. But just think if we got 75% of that done, that would be some huge strides. We would be more self-sufficient on well water. We would be more self-sufficient with some solar power. We might be able to have the 12-acre field in the front about halfway fenced in. Yeah, we could have some big strides. So our goal, you know, eventually we want to be able to quit our jobs and just be out here doing this. And before we do that, we want our infrastructure done. We don't want to be spending money on infrastructure once we quit our full-time jobs. So getting more and more infrastructure done is very important. Getting our bills lower by saving money on water, saving money on power is also important. And so these are big strides and gets us one step closer to maybe being able to quit our full-time jobs and just be able to be out here full-time instead doing this kind of thing. So wish us the best. I do think that 23 is going to be a good year. I've really got some good feelings about it. I think we're going to make some huge improvements. So in the end, we'll just have to wait and see whether that comes true or not. You know, there's always curveballs, there's always challenges, and we'll see how it turns out at the end of the year. But I think that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys had a happy and safe new year, and I'll see you in the next video.